Time to check in with Dr. Joe Schwarz. He is host of the Dr. Joe Show, which airs here on CJAD Sundays at 3. He is also director of the McGill Office for Science and Society. So, Joe, I sent you the story this morning. This thing was picked up in so many different places. I grabbed the headline off CNN, which basically says, eating a hot dog, singular, a hot dog, can cut 36 minutes off your lifespan. I said, let's talk about this. So let's start with that. What do you make of this?
Did you just pick this up on CNN now?
I saw it this morning.
Oh, really? I wonder why. Because this is last year that this was done. It's a study done in University of Michigan, and the study was so misinterpreted by, of course, all the headlines, which picked up on this hot dog thing, and the taking 36 minutes off your life. But when you look at the actual paper, that's really not what it messages. The overall message is that it is beneficial for us to eat healthy, and that there are foods that contribute more to our health and foods that are somewhat detrimental to our health. I think the paper is a little bit tongue-in-cheek in the sense that they try to calculate these minutes that taken off your, healthy life. And what they attempted to do was to look at all of the nutrients that are present in food, the fat, the sugar, the salt, additives, etc. And they looked at the scientific literature to see which one of these are quote, good for us and which are bad for us. And they made some sort of calculation, which I can't really follow. It's very complex how they did that calculation. But anyway, they came up with these minutes. But in the paper itself, they very clearly say that this should not be taken literally. This is just to give the message that there are some foods that are more worthwhile eating than not. Because obviously, let's say you have a healthy diet, which is, these days we know it's mostly a plant-based diet. Now, let's say you're going to eat a hot dog. It is not going to take 35 minutes off of your healthy life. That's not what this means. It just means that this study encourages you to not eat hot dogs every day, but to have a much more varied diet. But they picked up all of the media picked up on this business of the hot dog or a soft drink taking whatever it was 12 minutes off your life. But this is really not something that can apply to an individual. One thing that is also, very important to point out with all of these dietary studies, that they are based on populations. That is, when you look at a population at large, like when we look at, for example, the Mediterranean people, and you look at their diet, and you look at their disease levels, and you find that in general, people who have those kind of diets are healthier. They, let's say, use more olive oil than we do. But this doesn't apply to an individual. It doesn't mean that if one of us, all of a sudden starts using olive oil, that it's going to have a big impact. The same way that, when we look at drugs, and we look at the number needed to treat. For example, we know that if you have high cholesterol and you're given a statin drug, the number needed to treat to bring down that is something like 150. That means that if you have 150 people with high cholesterol, one of them will really benefit from reducing that. If you look at that on an individual level, you would think, well, this doesn't make much difference if I take it or not. But when you look at it at the population level, there are millions and millions of people with high cholesterol, and if they take the medication, you're going to save many, many people. So, population studies can be misleading in that sense. So, I would not worry about eating one hot dog, but neither would I make a habit of eating a hot dog for lunch every day.
Okay, but this is, again, all about that whole processed food routine, right? And sodium and nitrates and all that. Okay.
It is. It's the processed foods, and I think that's something that these days, we have pretty sound agreement on in scientific research. is that diets that are high, especially in what we call the ultra-processed foods, and these are foods that you normally would not be able to concoct in your kitchen because you don't have in your cupboard, you don't have diglycerides, you don't have emulsifiers, you don't have phosphates, you don't have sodium nitrate. So you couldn't make these foods at home. Right. These are industrial foods with lots of additives, lots of sugar, lots of salt. That's what we call highly processed foods. Whereas at the other extreme of the spectrum, of course, everyone would recognize that eating an apple means that you're eating an unprocessed food. Now, then what about applesauce?
Oh,
right?
No.
What if you squash that apple and then you add some citric acid to it to
well, hold on.
Sure
what if I just squash the apple and don't add anything to it and just have applesauce that way?
That's absolutely an unprocessed food.
There you go.
And I have very good memories of that unprocessed food.
As do I.
When I was very young, this was my mother's remedy for virtually everything.
Okay.
Was a grated apple, and she would grate the apple. And of course, when you grate it, it will turn brown very quickly because so much of the surface area is exposed to the air. And I always associated that brown scraped apple as being healthy because that's what my mother used to give me when I was very young. And believe it or not, to this day, if I feel a cold coming on, I make myself a grated apple, and I enjoy when it turns brown.
That's amazing. Listen, I don't want to run out of time. I do want to give you credit because the other food today, and this was yours, is cheese. A new study about cheese being good for what?
Right. Now, for your brain. It reduces the risk of cognitive decline. Now, this is a study that comes from Japan, where, of course, dairy foods are not so widely consumed. And they looked at about 1,500 senior Japanese, and they had them fill out dietary surveys. And lo and behold, when they did these mental aptitude tests, they found that the people who ate camembert cheese did somewhat better. Obviously, the camembert cheese industry is going to love this study, but the scientists, of course, are going to look at this askew because what did they control for in terms of the diet? Was it not just the fact that people who ate camembert cheese are people who are likely to be in the higher echelons of society, of who have money to spend, and who also have a much more varied diet? So it's very difficult to control for these things. But they found this association. They had these 1,500 people do these mental tests. They had them fill out questionnaires. And from that, they extracted the fact that there were somewhat better scores on these mental tests by people who ate more camembert cheese. But they don't quantify the amount of cheese, so we really don't know what to make of this study, except for the fact that if you do like some camembert cheese, don't worry about eating it.
Yes, it's good for your brain. So remember, you should eat as much camembert as you can.
That's what all the headlines say.
Yeah.
It says, eating cheese can significantly improve brain health, study finds. That's one of the headlines.
I'm glad we have you to
Well, I look
straighten
at
this
that
stuff
study,
out.
and it doesn't actually find that.
Well, whatever. Enjoy your cheese. Have a hot dog, just not too many. Dr. Joe, thank you.
And a grated apple.
Yeah, and a grated apple, which is always good for you because it's always good for you. Dr. Joe Schwarz, don't forget, he's on here Sundays at 3 o'clock on CJAD. Thank you, Joe.